This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
And welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. Classes will be conducted online for the rest of the school year at Columbia University in New York. This comes as many of America's top colleges seeing huge protests on and off their campuses, with protesters even shouting things like, "We love Hamas," as Jewish students are deeply concerned for their safety. And joining us now to discuss all of this is former Israeli Consulate Spokesman Jake Novak. Jake, great to have you here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Always great to talk with you, Rita.
Are you stunned to see just how pervasive these protests are now all over, it seems like, many different American campuses? And it seems like they're escalating and growing, and the intensity clearly is too in what they're saying.
No, I'm not really stunned. I'm very disappointed and absolutely infuriated by it, but not stunned, because this trend, this was something that was inevitable. This result was inevitable because of the way the universities have been acting for so long. You know, Rita, it doesn't matter whether you're Hunter Biden, Jordan Belfort, or Columbia, Harvard, or University of Michigan. If you have that kind of money pouring on your head, like has been pouring into these universities for 60 years now, unstopped, untaxed, ratcheting up every year from both donations, from jacked up tuition, 5-6 times the rate of inflation, and they get away with it completely untaxed. You know that when that kind of money goes in, you're going to do crazy things. People start getting drunk on it. And what universities started to do pretty much in the early 90s, late 80s, was to start hiring radical professors and people, and then, of course, giving them tenure to the point where they could just basically get away with anything. And it's surprising in some ways it took this long for it to manifest itself in these kinds of incidents, but it's been smaller incidents. You know, 20 years ago, there was a great documentary called Columbia Unbecoming. You can watch it on YouTube, documenting with video professors telling Israeli students to get out of their classrooms, professors indoctrinating students. This was at Columbia. That was 20 years ago. And I remember saying, well, what are we going to do about that? And the best answer I got was, well, let's raise a lot more money for Columbia so they can hire some pro-Israel professors. I said, that's not going to solve the problem. You know, it's nice, but that's not going to solve the problem. And so, of course, this was going on at all the schools, and they have tenure, and they're hiring. And, of course, now we know that Columbia and places like John Jay College in New York have hired actual terrorists, not just spokespeople, but terrorists, to put them on the faculty. So maybe we were lucky, Rita, that it's taken this long for it to manifest. But, of course, we don't feel lucky now. We're outraged now. But we should realize the seeds for this were sown a long time ago.
How bad do you think this is going to get? I mean, it seems like it's only escalating.
Yeah, it's going to get worse until, we got a couple of things going for us here, Rita. One is the semester is ending. Here we are. It's the end of April, a couple more weeks of classes and finals, and then they'll clear out the campuses, and a lot of their manpower is going to go. I mean, some of these kids are going to go home, even though there are professional organizers among them. And by the way, members of Hamas, actual members of Hamas on a lot of these campuses, that's going to wither out a little bit. So that's good. But whether they come back again in September is going to be a big question. And one of the things is, if they don't come back in September, it'll probably be because they really make these campuses a total lockdown. I'm an alumnus of Columbia, and I still go up to campus a lot because it's a nice space. It's a nice, quiet, clean, basically like a park space, that campus. I love hanging out there. And I would really be sad to see that go. But I get the feeling that the only way they might be able to keep calm on the campus after the classes end this semester is to shut it down indefinitely and make it that you have to have an ID to get in and all that kind of stuff. And that would also, in a way, be allowing these protesters. I don't call them protesters; they're urban terrorists. Allowing these urban terrorists to win.
That's a great point, because even the fact that they said they're going to put classes online, remote, there are a lot of people, and understandably, because there's so many Jewish students, as you know, Jake, that were very concerned for their safety. They had the rabbi there also who was saying, it's not safe for Jewish students to be there, which is really scary. But in addition to that, some people said maybe they shouldn't do any remote classes, that the right thing to do is have the leadership clamp down on these people and allow Jewish students to learn like everybody else. Why should they have to suddenly not even have the college experience because they're kind of acquiescing to these people?
That's right. That's exactly right. I am not in favor. Listen, I don't say that the students should get in the faces of these terrorists and agitate them. I don't say that, but I agree. And I've been saying this for a couple of days now. Do not surrender the campus. Do not surrender our streets. Don't surrender the Brooklyn Bridge, because even if you have a safer space to go to, whether it's in virtual classes or in the case of the Jewish community, maybe they feel like they can go to Israel, those places will become less safe over time if we keep surrendering our other public spaces and our other places of learning or other places of or other public places, period. We cannot do that. Now, within 5 miles of the campus of Columbia, you have 10, 15, 20, 25,000 alumni, good people, Jews, Christians, non-denominational folks who know that this is wrong, who outnumber the dozens of these protesters, urban terrorists by, a tremendous factor. I suggest that in the coming days, all of the good people just show up across the street from campus, surround the area, and just show how much more of us there are of them. Don't get into a confrontation. In fact, I wouldn't even ask them to do any chanting or sloganeering. Come there with an American flag and a Columbia flag and just stand there silently and just show how much more of us there are of them. That's what I suggest. I don't like the idea of surrendering. I don't like the idea of running away. It's a terrible precedent, one that we saw in Germany. The Nazis took over the German universities well before Rita, well before they took over the government. Albert Einstein was exiled to this country in 1932. The year before the Nazis took over. That just goes to show that these universities, no matter how elite they are, and they were elite in Germany, don't get me wrong, but how they can be easily infiltrated by Nazis, by urban terrorists, by people who mean no good.
You brought up actual terrorists hired in some schools. Who are you referring to? Because, wow, that is really interesting.
Yeah, well, there are actual Hamas members who are among the people wearing the masks and stuff like that. They may or may not be hired by the university, but we have a professor at Columbia, Mohammed Aboud, who is a terrorist. I mean, he is literally a terrorist. You have that woman at the John Jay College years ago who's still there, who said she wants to bomb the White House and was involved with a lot of terrorist movements. These are actual terrorists on these campuses. Now, most of them I'm talking about are infiltrators on the campus some of them might be even registered students in the last couple of years. But my sources tell me that they're on the campus of Columbia, on the campus of Michigan, Yale, and they're helping to organize some of the stuff. They are now they're basically under a clampdown. They're being told, don't go into full-on attack mode yet. But that's yet. They may yet do that. We got really lucky, Rita, if you remember several weeks ago when the urban terrorists were blocking the Brooklyn Bridge. And the only person who shoved one of those protesters aside to get to his daughter was an African-American man. Had that been a white man, had that been a Jewish man, had that been a cop, we would have seen a major, major violent event erupt. They're under instructions. Don't go after black people. Don't go after people who might be Muslim or black. So we got lucky there. Hopefully, meanwhile, so that tells me cops in riot gear now are enough, are more than enough to take care of this problem if they keep them off campus. We don't need the National Guard yet, but let's get them before we do.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
My name is Lily, and I've had hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, for years. I finally found some relief since taking Cosentyx. Relief means I can show up more.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
Going to the gym can be discouraging, especially if you're putting in the work but barely seeing changes. But with Tonal, you can actually see your progress with every workout. Tonal provides the convenience of a full gym and the expertise of a personal trainer anytime at home with one sleek system. Designed to reduce your mental load, Tonal is the ultimate strength training system, helping you focus less on workout planning and more on getting results. No more second-guessing your technique. Tonal gives you real-time coaching cues to dial in your form and help you lift safely and effectively. After a quick assessment, Tonal sets the optimal weight for every move and adjusts in 1-pound increments as you get stronger, so you're always challenged. Tonal lets you choose from a variety of expert-led workouts, from strength to aero hit to yoga and mobility, to keep you coming back for more. For a limited time, go to Tonal.com to get $500 off your Tonal purchase, plus a free 4-year warranty. That's Tonal.com for $500 off, plus a free 4-year warranty. Tonal.com.
Yeah, that's a great point. Do you think the leadership understands how serious it is? I mean, I'm happy to hear, at least I think of Eric Adams today was talking about, hey, finding out who are these agitators, talking about security. But a lot of these cases, he can't bring in the NYPD until the university calls. Obviously, that's different when it's the National Guard, but we haven't even heard any discussions of that. But we have heard at least Kathy Hochul condemning the protests.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it. The university has to call them in. And I want to talk to everyone now a little bit about an important lesson in leadership that we're not learning, that we are learning, but also not seeing in Manu Shafiq, the new president of Columbia University. She's new. She hasn't even been in position for a year. And I want to talk about tremendous personal opportunity that she has fumbled, and I don't think she'll ever get it back. I guess she might have another week or so to change this. But she is a Muslim woman. She's also a woman. She's not one of these people like Claudine Gay at Harvard. She is comes from a real academic background. She comes from the world of economics. She's not a gender studies or one of these other ridiculous disciplines. She's the real deal. And as a Muslim woman, she has the best platform in the history of academic America to stand up and say, how dare you call me an Islamophobe if I clear off these protesters? I know Islam better than you do. Most of these people don't even know what Islam means. And she has such an opportunity to be a hero and tell the world, dare these far leftists to call her an Islamophobe, dare them to say that she's being discriminatory against them, and be able to say, no, I'm doing this for academic freedom so that every person can study, Muslims and Jews and Christians and everybody else. And she's fumbled this opportunity. She's an incredible mediocrity. I don't trust her to remain the president of my university at all, not only because she hasn't handled the situation properly, but because she doesn't even have enough brains to promote herself. You know, like Milton Friedman said, the greatest discoveries of all time come from selfish self-promotion and greed. Well, if she had just thought about herself and her own reputation for a second, we would be much better off. What a missed opportunity. What a dope. There's really no other word for it.
You know, it is interesting now that you're talking about her history, Jake, because you're right. It's a moment for clarity. It's a moment to stand up. And boy, it could set an example for so many of these other schools. And yet she seems to be sort of waffling all over the place, which was a little bit like her testimony because, she said, okay, genocide is not a good idea. But then when it came to the point of the river to the sea, she kind of fumbled on that one.
Yeah. And let's think about some of the greatest heroes when it comes to the stories of persecution and standing up to it. Who do we remember? What was the most successful Holocaust movie of all time? Schindler's List. A non-Jewish guy who was a philanderer, kind of a phony in business, who did the right thing and stood up for all these Jewish people and risked his life to do it. There were some, that's a great lesson. You can't. You have this great opportunity to stand up for something and to do something that was right. What about all the Jewish people who became freedom riders during the civil rights movement? The three people who were murdered in Mississippi. That movie Mississippi Burning, is about their murder. One black man and two Jews. This is their opportunity. When you cross that divide and you say, I may not be black, I may not be Muslim, I may not be Jewish, but I'm standing up against hatred against these people. And if you want to say that I don't care about my own people because I've decided to stand up for someone else who's being persecuted, go fly a kite. She's had this opportunity. So many other people, those other Ivy League presidents had that opportunity. I was at Nassau. It was in Nassau County 2 years ago when Ben and Jerry's was going through their whole boycott Israel thing. And an African-American woman who's one of the legislators in Nassau County stood up, and she's no conservative. She's a far left Democrat. And the first thing she said was, as an African-American woman growing up in the South, I know what it's like not to be served. What a hero she was. She knew exactly what we were talking about, how we felt as Jews seeing Ben and Jerry's try to pull their product from people in Israel. This is an opportunity that's been fumbled. It goes way beyond just anti-Semitism. This is poor leadership. And for all the money that these college presidents get, for them to be such poor leaders is an example of the executive rot, the leadership rot we have in this country.
What about also all the way to the White House? Because so far, President Biden, when he's been asked about it, he kind of puts both Israel and what's been happening in Gaza on the same plane. And he hasn't been having the same anger, it seems, even about Hamas as he has about Israel. I mean, at every turn, he's been scolding Netanyahu. He's been criticizing publicly Netanyahu. And yet I would love to see him banging his fist saying, bring the hostages home. I mean, where is the fervor on that? It seems he's trying to kind of have it both ways. Clearly, it's an election year, and he seems to be pandering to Arab American votes.
Yeah, you caught me there, Rita. I was burying the lead going after the Colombia president. The lead is our president of the United States who's doing the same thing. What a missed opportunity for him. He doesn't seem to be physically able, including there are other Democrats like this too. He doesn't seem physically able to say the word anti-Semitism with also saying Islamophobia. And I know there's Islamophobia incidents here and there, but there's one for every 10,000 anti-Semitic incident in this country. I mean, really, it's silly to equate them. It's embarrassing that he equates them. And he's not. And also, this is the same administration that as soon as they got into office, took down from the White House website Donald Trump's executive order from December of 2019, which expanded the government's ability to enforce the rules against anti-Semitism. It's something that Alan Dershowitz, when he stood next to Donald Trump when he signed the executive order, said was the greatest act of against anti-Semitism he'd ever seen in his career. Now, the Biden administration has done something really weaselly with that. They've taken it off the White House website. They haven't rescinded the executive order, but they also haven't enforced it. It's kind of like a pocket veto. So they have the plausible deniability of saying, oh, no, we didn't get rid of it. But of course, in effect, you did get rid of it. And speaking of bad leadership, take a look at the John Fettermans of the world. Take a look at where the real polls are. Joe Biden's weakness is among moderate Democrats and older Democrats. He doesn't have an issue. He's not going to win this election by going more anti-Israel. He should see what Fetterman is doing and be more pro-Israel. The people who are advising him, some of them are stupid. Political consultants tend to be very stupid. But also there are people in that administration who are outright agents of Iran, anti-Israel. Some of them are paid, some of them are not, who are giving him this bad advice. He would go up in the polls, not down, if he defied these crazy voters in Michigan and Minnesota. Everyone who knows elections and knows this country knows that, except for this guy, because he doesn't know this country. He's been in Washington too long, and he's mentally challenged.
Well, and he seems to be afraid to take on extremists in his own party. I mean, the other day, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was introducing him in Virginia, and she starts talking about the peaceful protests everyone's watching at that time, them burning down things, and burning flags and American flags. And then when President Biden gets up, he says, you should listen to that lady. He's not reining in even those in his own party who have been very critical and don't seem to want to condemn Hamas, a number of them.
Well, you've really touched on something very, very important here. And this is something I know you personally know something about because you know about the history of Eastern Europe and things that go on there. In Eastern Europe, places like Russia, Ukraine, and even Poland, for more than 100 years, there's been this political tactic of using anti-Semitism like a political football. You only accuse the other side of anti-Semitism, only call it out when it comes from the other side, and you excuse it on your own side. The net result of that is it encourages more anti-Semitism because it sends the message to your own people. You'll continue to get away with it. We won't excommunicate you. And to the other side, it says, oh, this is just a partisan thing. You don't really care about anti-Semitism. I've been worried about that coming to the United States for years, and now it appears to be here. Not only Joe Biden, but also Chuck Schumer. When Chuck Schumer gave that big speech on the Senate floor about anti-Semitism, he never called out AOC and the Squad. He never called out these universities. He never called out anyone to the left or in the Democratic Party. And that is where there's been growth in anti-Semitism. There's absolutely anti-Semitism on the right. I call it out as much as I can. But the growth factor has been coming from the left for the last 20, 30 years. And Schumer doesn't mention it. And Biden doesn't mention it. And that's not just cowardice, Rita. It encourages more anti-Semitism. Look at what it's turned. Look at Eastern Europe. Look at Russia, Ukraine, and Poland. These places where the politicians encourage more anti-Semitism to win a few votes here and there, or to get on TV a little bit more. It's a terrible, terrible situation. We want that in our country? I don't, but we're there. We've come to this point now, and until Biden calls out his own members of his own party who are anti-Semites, he's going to be one of the net causes of more anti-Semitism.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're talking also, you think about how important it is for good people to stand up and do the right thing, which a lot of people did, as I know firsthand in Poland. I mean, at very risky circumstances, standing up against evil. It should be everybody's fight. It
should be. It's a winner politically. I mean, again, let's say you're not such a good-hearted person. I know you are, Rita. But let's say you're not such a good-hearted person. It's a great way to really reach out to most people. The United States voter is not as you might think they are if you only looked at social media or you only looked at some of the news channels. It's not that bad. We are still a sane country for the most part. There is still a massive support for places like Israel and also for Christian freedom and all kinds of religious freedom. All that stuff exists. And for these politicians not to see that, again, I blame a lot of the political consultants. They are very poor at their jobs. Some of them are also bad people. These are the people who couldn't get better jobs as lawyers and doctors, and they're giving these people bad advice. I mean, who was advising the president of the United States not to be more steadfast for Israel? Who was advising him to equate the Hamas people with one or two settlers, who once set fire to a car? I mean, honestly, this is bad advice, Rita. And it's so sad to see because the result is not just more bad advice. The result is a more violent and divided and sad country.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Yeah, exactly. It's important to set the tone early on and have moral clarity early on versus letting it fester. And now we're seeing what looks like to be organized protests. I mean, they seem to have a lot of the same tents, sort of same style at some of these encampments. Who do you think is actually paying for this? Who's behind this?
Well, a lot of it is foreign countries, Qatar, and Iran works through Qatar. So it's Iranian money, it's Qatari money, it's George Soros money, it's Chinese money. And I want everyone to understand that this is a form of money laundering. We have these laws in this country about foreign donations to political campaigns. So whereas Qatar and China and sometimes even Russia and certainly Iran would love to donate $10 million to a bunch of Senate candidates and get them to vote against Israel, they can't quite do that directly. So they launder the money. They go through these universities. They set up these Middle Eastern studies departments and give, that always existed, but then expand them greatly and bring in a bunch of professors who, by the way, are on a double payroll. If you're a tenured professor at a university, you're not allowed to be on a full salary from someone else, by the way. So that's a rule that they break all the time. But this is money laundering. This is like campaign finance money laundering. You can't give that money directly to Joe Biden. You can give it to Hunter. You can give it to a university and get your message across that way.
And what about domestically, though? What about domestically as well?
Yeah, so domestically, you have a bunch of these shell operations that are taking that foreign money. There's a group up in Westchester that takes the money. There's the incorrectly named Jewish Voice for Peace. They're not Jewish. They're not for peace, and they don't have much of a voice. But they take in a lot of this money, and they're basically money laundering. It's money laundering. They take this money from foreign entities, and also people like George Soros, who I know has U.S. citizenship, but he's basically a foreigner. And, of course, his entire raison d'etre is to crash the U.S. economy. George Soros is a billionaire because he bets against economies. That's why he wants mayhem in our streets. He wants the dollar to completely collapse, stuff like that. So it's basically – so there are American organizations, but don't be fooled. They're getting money from elsewhere. And they are basically they're making that money look clean. We may not like what they do with the money, but it looks like, I guess it's legal. It's not. They're taking the money from foreign entities and doing the foreign entities' bidding by donating to the universities or donating to candidates or whatever they're doing with it.
Do you believe that a lot of this is orchestrated? Because as you look at it, it just seems like they have the pre-produced signs. They have, same tents as we're talking about. It seems so organized, and they seem to be very sort of in terms of putting it out on social media. But when you see all these repetitions, if you will, of style and sort of performance, if you will, it seems like it's very well sort of orchestrated.
Yes, and now you've just laid the groundwork for the second thing I want the government to do when we have a decent government, that is, this should be something investigated under the RICO Act. This is a racketeering operation by certain groups who have coordinated these protests with the same signs, as you said, same tents, same slogans, and same MO across the country. So this is a RICO violation, in my opinion, and that should also be something that if we get a different president or a decent attorney general, we don't have either right now, I would absolutely use the RICO Act to go after these people, in addition to some of the things I mentioned before, like some of the expanded definition of anti-Semitism under Title VI that Donald Trump put in place, which has still not been rescinded. They're trying to make us forget about it. Those are two things that need to happen because you're right. This is an organized attempt to disrupt the educational enterprise and the peace and tranquility of our college campuses. So I say RICO all the way on this, in addition to the immediate thing which needs to happen, which is the cops to clear these people off, and then them to be charged under that expansion of Title VI that Donald Trump brought into place.
Yeah, and also, as you're talking about RICO, I mean, where is Congress? Where is the Department of Justice looking into these people who are fostering sort of this hate against America?
Well, you've got a Department of Justice that, starting under Obama and now continuing under Biden, is only interested in right-wing anti-Semitism, right-wing terrorism. And it exists. Don't get me wrong. I know it really well, and I know it exists. But frankly, it is a small fraction of the threat that we have from leftist groups who are being clearly telegraphed by this administration and the Obama administration beforehand that they will not be touched, that they can go on unfettered. Merrick Garland, talk about someone who has ruined his reputation and his chance to be remembered well in America. He has really ruined his reputation by being so uber partisan. And it'd be bad enough if he was just doing that to go after Donald Trump and all the stuff that's gone there. But he's also really done something to really hurt his fellow Jews. He's really not. There's so many things the Department of Justice could have done in the last couple of years to help stop this from happening. But he's been focusing on, some crazy kook in Alabama somewhere who, again, I'm not laughing that off. But that's not the threat here. The real threat is coming from the left right now. That needs to be balanced out. And you have somebody like Merrick Garland who knows all about this kind of stuff. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's thrown away. And here he is making it worse.
Yeah, it's a tremendous missed opportunity, which makes it very dangerous for America. With such serious repercussions. Well, everybody, be sure to subscribe and share to this podcast. Jake Novak, what an interesting discussion, and really great to have you here and have your insight.
I hope the next time we speak, it's over a happier topic, but I appreciate your hospitality. Thank you so much.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.